Ahoy and welcome back to the Workaround. I am Bob Gilbreth, your host. You are in good company with thousands of fellow entrepreneurs and innovators who follow my stories from a career in tech startups and corporate innovation. I'm sitting here right now to make you think, smile, and discover a shortcut to success or a trap to avoid. And today I've got one that's been in the back of my long list of story ideas and tip ideas going back to time at my agency early in my career, my first entrepreneurial experience, where we had a big point of decision about where we needed to take our organization to get us to the next level. We got lucky, and it's a story that both on kind of the organizational change, how we got there, what we did to make it happen, but more importantly, something that just last week made me realize that the dividends are so much bigger. So let me jump in. Reorgs. Is there a more dreaded hyphenated word in business speak? Business speak might be the second worst hyphenated word. Anyway, we all know companies in decline and growth need to make personnel structure changes a regular practice. I'm sure you've been there. The surprise all-hands meeting, the admission of challenges from within and without, a summary of findings from the consultants shown to provide air cover, the syrupy faux excitement for the future, the release of new org charts with fresh reporting relationships, and the inevitable departure of trusted colleagues, the FTEs affected by a calculus known only to those well-compensated consultants. Businesses and organizations must evolve, but does it have to be this hard? I don't think so. Years ago, my business partners and I lucked into selecting an organizational structure that addressed our problems and fueled breakthrough growth. We managed this by going with our guts. Instead of building a bigger ship, we spread our crew out into rowboats. We got bigger by getting smaller, trusting the power of teamwork instead of our own command and control. This is how dedicated teams can tap the power of social capital at scale and continue delivering value long after a company is gone. It's fall 2005, and it is the best and worst of times for our digital advertising agency, Bridge Worldwide. The good news: our agency is growing quickly thanks to the shift in marketing spending from offline to online. Our clients are big, stable companies with budgets to go with it. And new business RFPs are coming our way at a rapid clip. That's why the world's largest agency holding company put down a significant deposit to buy our company a year earlier. The bad news: we're struggling with growth and a straining structure. I'm losing one employee a week to burnout and top of market offers from competitors desperate for our digital experts. Our clients have started to feel pain from our lack of responsiveness and the carousel of rotating personnel on their accounts. We're at about 100 employees, which our agency business mentors tell us is a turning point. Our organizational structure is a matrix with the dual reporting relationships and staff assigned project by project. Most agencies start this way, but stick with it too long. That's why most of those agencies get worse as they get bigger. We're rotating people in and out of projects at a frenetic pace. Scheduling people is impossible when they're scattered across so many projects. It seems everyone is a decision maker, which means no one can decide. Friction is rampant, everybody's competing for resources, and there's no longer a personal connection or common cause. Now, as an economics major, I don't remember a lot, but one thing that always stuck in my head is this concept of diseconomies of scale that happen when growth leads to inefficiency. All the signs are here. Something's gotta change. My business partners and I hold a bi-weekly strategy session on Friday mornings. And over the past 3 of these, we've been debating 2 paths we see as potential in going forward. First, functional departments. Create a real creative department, along with the same for account services, technology, and strategy. We'd empower department heads, and they would assign team members and work on clients and projects as they come in. Option 2, dedicated teams. Form cross-functional teams around one or more specific clients. These small groups would work as a single business unit, led by the managers of the 4 key disciplines. They would handle all the work for the clients assigned to them. For weeks, we've talked along the precipice of a decision. We lob the same pros and cons at each other with little passion behind either of them. None of us has made a reorg decision like this in our young careers. We fear frightening our staff off, confusing our clients, and losing the momentum we need to keep the company growing. But the problems aren't fixing themselves. The tip of the scale is that our clients tend to fit nicely into buckets based on budgets and industry. It just seems to make sense to put all the people who work on, say, food brands, corporate scale brands, and healthcare products into separate groups. Plus, we have a gut instinct dislike of a departmental model. It smells of empire building and throwing work back and forth across a virtual wall. Plus, most of us come from client-side brand management jobs, which operate primarily as independent business units. So we go with what we know, dedicated teams. Now we have to get our teams to go along with it. Sure, you can push your new organizational change through top-down, all-hands, command and control, surprise Friday afternoon meetings. But what if your grand plans fail to account for dozens of realities on the ground where your team operates? And what if your best employees see that as the fact that you don't seem to care what they think and decide to go ahead and interview with that competitor down the street? Through trials and errors over the years, we learned that making a decision is 1% of the work, and team buy-in is the other 99%. Especially when your reorg is about giving them more responsibility. So we go into enrollment mode. We start with a 4-month-long rollout timeline to get everything settled by mid-January. We draft some talking points and a strawman structure for 5 separate dedicated teams. And in our next weekly all-hands meeting, we tell the company that we're working on a new organizational structure to address the issue that everyone is already aware of. In the following weeks, we pull aside key people in our groups that we have pegged for our team leader openings. We get them pumped up about the opportunity for them to grow, ask for their input on staff decisions, and get their commitment to help us make the rollout a success. They have some mixed feelings. They're excited by a needed change, yet nervous to take on the added responsibility. But they do commit and give us key input that improves our plans. When we're ready to share with the broader company, we come with rationale for the change, general talking points for clients, answers to frequently asked questions, and a list of assignments for these new teams to take ownership of together. They take over the timing of project transitions and personnel switches. They get to come up with their own team names, and we give them a team-building activity budget. After the all-hands meeting, we send a survey to ask for feedback. 29% of the employees are very positive and 40% are positive about the prospects. Biggest watch out is the creative department, where 40% of our folks are negatively viewing the changes. We decide to dig in further there and find out that they're wary of getting trapped doing the same old work. This inspires us in turn to find ways to flex them into working on special assignments and new business projects. The calendar turns to January 2006, and our teams charge out of the gate. There's the typical forming and storming as the groups come together, of course. It's kind of laughable how common this is by now, but they quickly do get to norming and performing off the charts. Timelines are tighter, margins are stronger, client feedback ticks up, and many more smiles go up and down the elevator every day. It works incredibly well, and I'm fascinated with the question of, why? We set up some monthly business reviews with the team leaders as part of this shift. And it takes me about the third one of these to finally see the why this is happening. First, they're like mini agencies. The leaders operate like owners of their own business, making decisions that are best for the world that they live in daily. There's no political games to play, no angling for certain people or resources, just a client to serve and a number to hit. I think it's kind of like a law of physics that the bigger the company gets, the more decisions should be pushed down versus laddered up. And to prove it, that it's on physics, there's a quote I love from the complex systems physicist, Yanir Bar-Yam, who wrote, quote, "A group of individuals whose collective behavior is controlled by a single individual cannot behave in a more complex way than the individual who is exercising the control." There's also a lot of ownership that I see of the wins and losses that the team experiences personally. They're owning it, they feel it. They learn from their own mistakes, they celebrate their own successes. And this is another insight I ran across recently in a book called The Culture of New Capitalism. There's a quote here that hits on it well. It says, in principle, any well-run firm should want its employees to learn from their mistakes and admit a certain degree of trial and error learning. In practice, big firms do not. The size of the firm indeed makes the greatest difference in this regard. In small service firms, under 100 and so employees, care of customers is more directly connected to the firm's survival. Speaking of survival, that leads into the second key point. This is why this worked. They sink or swim together. In a matrix or departmental structure, you barely know the people on the other side of your work. It's easy to whine and complain about, say, the salesperson's pushiness or the tech team's slow responsiveness. But there's no hiding when those functional owners sit by each other daily. We are socially programmed to cut the crap when we're in a small group with a job to get done. You just don't want to disappoint the person sitting next to you in the trenches. I think all this is mostly about enabling trust, which is a factor that is so much easier to establish when you have recurring cooperation and shared responsibility. A guy named David Horshager wrote a book on this called The Trust Edge. He shares a truth that would have made our team's decision a lot easier had we read it many years ago. David says, "Trust can accelerate and mistrust can destroy any business, organization, or relationship. The lower the trust, the more time everything takes, the more everything costs, and the lower the loyalty of everyone involved. By contrast, greater trust brings superior innovation, creativity, freedom, morale, and productivity. In a climate of trust, people are more creative, motivated, productive, and willing to sacrifice for the team." You know, today's large companies, if you work on one, they constantly have to set endless rules and build complicated structures that constantly need reorganizing because they lack that trust. It reminds me of working with client success partners at Facebook and Google. They weren't even allowed to speak with their own software developers. Imagine the fear and lack of trust from something like that. The speed of trust in a small team allows startups to run circles around their giant competitors. It's also why small units in Ukraine continue to deflect waves of Russian soldiers ordered about by desk-bound yes-men in Moscow. However, your executive team and our executive team had to change to make this model work. We gave up much of our command and control. In those monthly meetings and one-on-ones in between, we asked what they needed and how we could help, rather than push unrealistic goals onto them. Our role shifted to look at ways to build bridges between the teams. We did more career planning with a special desire to mix people up every so often. We organized quarterly functional offsites to share best practices. and there was a significant investment in teaching the craft of leadership. Nearly every person in these roles was in charge of a business unit for the first time in their careers. We brought in training resources, took them on leadership offsites, and committed to meeting regularly and giving them the coaching they needed. As the months and years passed, we had other problems to solve and organizational structures to tweak, but the dedicated teams model helped us get our business up into the stratosphere. We grew from $10 million in revenue to nearly $50 million in revenue 5 years later. Our margins, client retention, and employee satisfaction were world-class for an agency of our size. A lot more smiles went up and down that elevator every day. Alas, the magic eventually ran out. We finished the 5-year earnout we signed up for when we sold the company. Myself and most of our band broke up to try our hands at new challenges, and the agency fell into periodic reorgs that are now very common in the big agency holding company world. All good things come to an end. Or do they? Last week, I sat down for coffee with my friend Mike, a key member of our dedicated teams many years ago. He was just impacted by a reorg at his big co-employer across the street and cranking up the old networking machine. Mike sat down as I closed my laptop and said, "I can't believe how helpful the Bridge network has been since I shared my news about the layoff." It's been 12 years since Mike worked at the agency, yet former teammates and clients have come out of the woodwork to help him find potential full-time and project-based work. We keep in touch still through group texts, Facebook pages, and recurring gatherings, and pay it forward when someone is in need. This doesn't happen at every company. It happened because we created a trust-based system that elevated us all to higher levels of humanity. Few of us work together today, but the relationships we built boosted us into a kind of permanent orbit of mutual support and success. Our Friday morning decision in 2004, made to maximize profits, put social capital in our pockets that we will continue to benefit from for the rest of our lives. Whew, okay. Hey, how about a word from our sponsor, which is how we might work together. The companies that I do things with that might overlap with your needs. First, Fleet is our holding company for services businesses. We invest in leaders that are ready to start their own companies. We also do a little bit of M&A work. If this might be you, hit my office hours link. Would love to chat. A2 Influence is our content development agency that helps some of the biggest brands and retailers create and distribute authentic content at scale, including social and influencer. Our CEO, Rob Reinfeld, would love to speak with you and share our approach. Revelin is our consulting practice that helps with revenue alignment, growth management, and other RevOps functions. The CEO of Revelin, Jess Schumann, is standing by to share a no-cost assessment of your business. I've got links for her here. And then finally, open invitation to click my office hours link. I save a couple of days a week for any topic, anything on your mind. Don't hold back. Love to have those meetings. You never know. It might lead to a post. It might lead to something of us learning together. Just go for it. Click the link over on Substack. And finally, my bonus cool content of the week, a little something I found meaningful. You might agree. This is called A Playbook for Real Leaders. And I found this through actually a group I got involved in last summer. I discovered I've been reading the work on Substack by a really smart guy named Tom Morgan. He put together and announced last summer a group called The Leading Edge, a community of leaders interested in pursuing wisdom and self-improvement. The community members and the content that Tom has put together are incredible. You don't even have to be a paying member to get a lot of great stuff from his YouTube page and Substack. As an example, last week, Tom shared an interview with a brilliant executive coach, Brian Wetton. It starts with a very bold statement that I'm sure resonates with many people today. Brian says, "Hundreds of thousands of people feel trapped in unfulfilling corporate jobs torn between pursuing purpose-driven work or reviving their current career path. The key to resolving this tension is learning how to shift from heroic to authentic leadership. Brian's got a really neat model he talks about in this YouTube video around the second mountain. Particularly resonated with me as I looked back on my ups and downs in the startup world, and it really helped me more clearly see the right path for my career going forward. So check out the links for Tom's Substack intro, as well as the full video interview with Brian, which I think you'll really enjoy. Anyway, that's all for this week. Thanks for joining me, and ahoy for now.